It's fair to say that the Israeli government has been pretty effusive in its praise of Donald Trump and its congratulatory messages directed at the next president of the United States. Indeed, Benjamin Netanyahu, the Prime Minister, was very quick out of the blocks to congratulate Donald Trump well before those final results came in that we've just heard about in Wisconsin, sending Donald Trump over that magic number of 270 electoral college votes. This is quite significant because it's safe to say the relationship between the pair has been strained at times. Back after the last election, when Donald Trump lost to Joe Biden, he lashed out at Benjamin Netanyahu for congratulating Joe Biden. He said, to use Benjamin Netanyahu's nickname, he had done more than anyone for Bibi, and he felt betrayed by his lack of loyalty. Now, we've seen Benjamin Netanyahu come out very quickly and throw his support behind Donald Trump. And I think that talks to some of the tensions that exist in the relationship here, the tensions that will exist going forward as the United States, the new administration, tries to get a hold of what is happening here in the Middle East and tries to deal with Israel and its behaviour in Gaza, in Lebanon, and the broader issues across this region, including the aggression that is being shown by Iran. There has been a lot of praise, as I mentioned, for Donald Trump in receiving this endorsement by the American people, and I think it's safe to say that the Israeli government will be both happy to see this outcome but also mildly cautious, because there is this discussion happening within the ranks of the Israeli government and the Israeli population as to whether or not they will be able to get as much out of a Trump administration as they would have from a Harris administration, whether or not Donald Trump will start trying to pull back on some of the support that the US administration has been giving Israel, or indeed whether Israel could be getting a bit more of a freer hand to deal with this situation going forward.
Yeah, and across the border into Gaza, Matt Doran, we've just heard a short time ago from a senior Hamas official who spoke to Reuters, Sami Abdul Zuri, saying that Donald Trump will be tested on his statements that he can stop the war within hours of becoming US president. And he said, quote, "We urge Trump to learn from Joe Biden's mistakes." How might we read what Hamas has had to say about the outcome of this election?
Well, I think there is a lot of uncertainty as to what will happen next. And while Donald Trump has said that he wants to bring this war to an end, or at least he says he wants to bring the fighting to an end, he has not outlined what those next steps are. If you do end the war in Gaza, if you do end the conflict in Lebanon, there has to be a day after plan, as it's often referred to. There has to be a discussion about rebuilding, particularly in Gaza. What sort of administration is put in place in that territory to rebuild and to regroup the services that are going to be needed for that population going into the future? For all that Donald Trump has been saying that he wants to see an end to those hostilities, he hasn't actually outlined how he will achieve that, or indeed what will happen after that. So I think that's why there is a lot of discussion at the moment, a lot of uncertainty about just what a Donald Trump presidency could mean. We also have to remember that this is a man who has made a career based on the so-called art of the deal. He wrote a book about it, or at least a book was published in his name along those lines. So there is a discussion as well happening as to whether he will just try to strike some sort of deal to get an agreement in Gaza, get an agreement in Lebanon that might benefit Israel and not really benefit the Palestinians or the Lebanese people there, just to get it off the agenda and to try to diffuse that situation. It won't help going forward, the plight of the Palestinians and the Lebanese people, but it would, as far as he's concerned, try to avoid it getting even messier than it already is.
As you've alluded to in the art of the deal, Donald Trump is a negotiator. We saw that in his first term as president, in meeting with Kim Jong-un. Quite historic pictures we saw at that point in Singapore. But also, he was this close to even meeting with Taliban officials until his own administration told him to pull back. Can we expect Donald Trump to move towards that audacious move to perhaps even speak with leaders of Hezbollah or Hamas?
Well, I think unpredictability is the name of the game here. When Donald Trump is wanting to do something, he generally does it. He doesn't necessarily wait for that official advice to come through, although in what you said there about the Taliban, he did heed some of those concerns. Well, I think what we will need to see in terms of Hamas and Hezbollah is whether or not what role they play in negotiations going into the future. We know that there were ceasefire and hostage deal negotiations happening in the Qatari capital of Doha over the last couple of weeks or so that officials were involved in, and the United States officials were also involved in that. Whether or not there would be any opportunity for a face-to-face meeting, I think that remains to be seen. I think we are a fair way down the line there. So, but yes, unpredictability, I think, is the name of the game here. And if generally it seems if Donald Trump wants to do something, he does it. He decided to move the US Embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem during his time in office. That was something that was against broad international policy and advice. He recognised the Golan Heights as Israeli territory, a disputed area that he said was part of Israel, again, against policy and against international law. So he generally makes these decisions of his own accord, and we'll have to wait and see how he decides to approach these negotiations, or if he wants to keep them at arm's length and keep them far away from his direct involvement there.